we're going to take a bottom-up approach, if you will, in the next point on our program. And we've got 4 members of the C-suite right here on stage with a lot of information to get through. So let me introduce you to our panelists this morning. We've got Anna Rulkiewicz, the CEO at LUX MED, which is part of Bupa. We have Maciej Dziergwa, the Chief Executive Officer at STX Next. Also Pawel Przewiezlikowski, he is CEO at Selvita. And Martin Balawajder, certainly last but certainly not least, I'm stumbling over my words here. Martin Balawajder, thank you very much for joining us as well, the CFO at 11-Bit Studios. So I want to start with a question to those of you who are listed, whether the reclassification means anything to you. Could it lead to renewed interest among investors and among global asset managers, for instance? Pawel, let me throw that question out to you. Sure. You got your microphone, so you've got your lapel mic. You can speak freely.
Sure. So I think that the reclassification is a very positive sign for the international investment community about the prospects of the Polish market. Now, historically, the people that have invested in Poland played on the convergence stories. So basically, they kind of analyzed the German market, Spanish market, Scandinavian market, and were looking for players who would fill the missing pieces or the kind of allocated roles of banks or retailers or others in an emerging economy. So they were not really looking at asset-centric companies. They were not looking at companies that would stand out from the global perspective, but rather kind of role players in a given market. And the specialist investors who are, for example, focused on the healthcare sector, biotech sectors, didn't touch Poland. And there was a reason for it. Simply, Poland was far remote and there were a lot of barriers. So I remember, for example, my first meeting with a large healthcare-focused fund in the US. The first question was when the manager looked at my business card, he was surprised that it's not in Cyrillic characters. So basically, if you start from such a low perception of Poland that it's a kind of post-Soviet bloc, before you invest in its oncology programs, then it takes a long road. So we think that now some of the things that, some of the homework that has been done for us, so people like FTSE Russell basically mark the check boxes, but Poland is a safe, reliable economy, and then the specialist investors focus on specific market sectors that are looking globally for assets that are best in class in a given therapeutic category will finally come to Poland and provide capital to companies like us.
So this is a quality stamp from your perspective?
Exactly.
Martin, let me turn to you then. What does it mean for 11-Bit Studios, which is a video gaming company, essentially?
A video gaming company, that's correct, Marcus, and perhaps I should apologise to the audience that I'm not dressed in a T-shirt and jeans as a typical member of the video gaming sector. But I would certainly echo what has been said, that we see the reclassification as an opportunity to attract a wider set of investors for 11-Bit Studios. Obviously, we're very pleased with our shareholding base in Warsaw, which is made up of local mutual funds, pension funds. We've certainly been out and about over the last 6 months attending investor conferences in Western Europe. We're seeing a growing level of interest in 11-Bit Studios. I certainly hope the reclassification is going to lead to more phone calls, more interest, more companies, more investors rather calling us and asking for a meeting. And I'd like to go back to one of the points that came up on the previous panel regarding corporate governance. That's something which I can't stress the importance of. We have always tried to ensure that from the moment we listed on the main market of the stock exchange, that we were audited by one of the big 4 companies, that we have good, solid corporate governance procedures in place. That's very, very important. One of the previous panelists commented regarding investor relations. Not all Polish companies, not all Polish listed companies have English investor relations websites. that something is that we were in that position. We've now changed that. 2017 financial statements are available in English. Our quarterly reports are, and all our current announcements are now coming out in English. And that wasn't the case a year before. So we've had to adapt and to be ready for this change.
Yes, I have to admit that I've been reading your web pages in English. My Polish is a little bit rusty at this point. Apologies for that. Now, to those of you who aren't directly listed, you've still been along for the ride, so to speak, over the past 3 decades. You're now along for the ride as Poland is being reclassified. Anna, I just want to ask you, does it signal anything to you as a CEO?
Yes, of course. I have the pleasure to run the company, and this is like a child of the Polish transformation because LUX MED was established 27 years ago. So I remember everything what happened with the Polish economy, and for me especially it is amazing time because we recognize Polish economy really as a performing economy of material size, and this is very important. Of course, quality of regulation is here very important. I think it's each year better. We have really, we did a lot in this area, consistency and much more predictability and stability on the Polish market. So from my perspective, I see that the market become much more mature, and we have really create now very quality regulation to really enhance here other investors.
Just to pick up on what Martin was saying about corporate culture, corporate governance, is Poland ready for the big time, so to speak, from your perspective?
Yes, from my perspective, yes, of course. I have here no doubts. The big Polish companies and in general the Polish market is very well prepared to it. And I think that the companies which are listed on the stock exchange, they are very professional and meet all requirements, and the standards are very professional.
Maciej, your view?
Yeah, so I see us, this Poland, being promoted to developed countries, a huge opportunity. So I developed the company for last 13 years, and what I can see recently, actually, since last year, is that there is more and more merger and acquisition requests that I received, and I expect that now with the access to the capital from the West, actually, we'll have a chance to build these national brands that we are missing in Poland. I agree that we miss strong national brands. This is what was confirmed from the previous panel. And I think the reason for this, one of the reasons for this, is that we didn't have a good access to the capital. We, as a company, we are the software house. We work with many startups and enterprise companies from Britain and US, and I can see enormous difference in comparison to working with the Polish company from the capital point of view. They just have easy access to much bigger money that allows them to invest and eventually build international brands, something that we struggle still in Poland. And now I can see it as a huge opportunity for Poland as a nation to eventually create a couple of really strong international brands.
Pawel, we just heard that we've been talking about gaining scale, essentially, within corporate Poland for Poland Inc. How do you think we get there, then? What's the next step that's needed to gain the scale that Maciej was just talking about?
So definitely we need to grow scale, get scale, we need fresh capital. So basically, regarding, Selvita has actually 3 business lines. One is oncology pipeline, proprietary oncology pipeline with a lead drug in phase 1 studies in the US. The second are drug discovery services, currently with about 300 people. And the third is artificial intelligence for precision medicine segment within a company called RDGen. So generally, for example, in order to scale the pipeline, we need capital for clinical trials. And if we tell people that we have a fully owned drug, that is one is already in the clinic, which is partnered, and the second one is fully owned, is going to the clinic next year, and that we've built also an early stage pipeline with about $15 million of money, they are wondering how we could do it. Of course, we used all kinds of instruments that were available in Poland, you know, cost efficiencies, grants, etc. We have also built But you know, there are limitations how far you can go, because if you want to move on, you have to spend money like everybody else on clinical development, tens of millions of dollars before your company goes to the approval. The same thing for scaling the services business. You have to invest in infrastructure, you have to invest in global sales. So this capital historically has not been available for biotech companies in Poland. Only in the recent years we kind of managed to convince investors that a company that is unprofitable, that just publishes scientific data is a viable company. But you know, that happened before in the companies that I worked at, and it's kind of normal.
Mm-hmm. Martin, are the needs of the video games industry similar to what we just heard there?
I think we're in a slightly different situation because from 11-bit Studios' point of view, we're a listed company. We have access to capital from the Warsaw Stock Exchange if we required it. But so far, we haven't had the need to tap the market for capital because all our existing productions, the games we've been working on, have been financed out of our own working capital that we've been able to generate. And that comes down to a very prudent financial policy. We're very, very careful with budgeting, with the amounts that we put aside that we have for specific games. Frostpunk, which we released in April of this year, cost us a total of 12 million Polish zloty, both in production and marketing costs. Our next title that will be released in 2 years' time, plus minus Project 8, which is its working title, has a budget of 20 million zloty, and that's all that we can finance from our own internally generated cash flows. So yes, the market is there if we need it, but so far we haven't had, we don't see an opportunity or we don't see a reason to access the market.
All right, I just want to mention that Michał Krupinski, the Chief Executive Officer at Bank Pekao, wasn't able to make it. I know that he was on the manifest for today's session, but he was otherwise engaged in New York, so he doesn't make it to this session. But I still want to ask a little bit about corporate, the capital pool in Poland and how corporates get their hands on money and how easy that is, for instance, from banks. And I just want to ask you then, I mean, how easy is it for corporates in Poland?
This is the difficult question for me because we are not a listed company and we are the part of the global investors. So Bupa is very interested in developing Polish country and us and healthcare sector. So we never use the capital from bank. But from my story, the LUX MED story, was that we approached many different institutions, especially investors like private equity funds, and then approached strategic investor. And during the last 55 years, I think it was quite easy to encourage investor to develop Polish market. And I am now very happy that the perspective for the investors and for companies in Poland become much bigger because the market is much more professional now, and I think it will be easier to really gain the capital and find the capital in Poland. But there are some areas I think which is worth to mention from my perspective, especially R&D, and this is something which we are very interested in Poland, and it will be really good, especially in healthcare, to create some hub for R&D, for innovation, technology innovation in healthcare. And I think here is very important to really build good space and good regulation with some incentives for investors to really encourage them to enter Polish market and develop technology. I am talking from different perspective, much more medical care, and the medical care has to be changed because the whole medical service has a lot of constraints around the world. This is lack of medical staff. This is financing as always. Yes, so we have to find new methods how we can treat people and invest in new technology to really keep people longer healthier for a longer time, because we need healthy people to really increase the productivity. From my perspective, it's very important to really encourage investors to develop innovation in healthcare, and then I think regulations really really very good prospect for the investor is very important that they can join and develop healthcare innovation healthcare solution in Poland.
Let's throw it forward then. I mean, how do we create that framework? Maciej, I'll get to you, Pawel, in a moment, but let's just start with you.
Yeah, so as many medium-sized companies in Poland, we managed to grow without external investor, actually. But today, from the perspective, I can see that, well, we grew up to 300 people. I believe with proper investment, like 5-6 years ago, we'd be able to be a company like 1,000 or 2,000 of people today. So that time, I didn't see options on the market for proper investment. Today, it is changing. It actually changed in the last couple of years. So there is more capital in Poland, and actually it happened after Poland joining European Union. Many things has changed. It took time, but today I think that investing options or capital gaining options are pretty good in Poland, but I think it will be even much better now when we joined this prominent group of developed countries. There will be more and more capital, so bigger chance to grow, faster grow your companies in Poland.
I
Pawel?
think that historically it has been quite easy to raise money in Poland if you had profits. So, in my previous life, I used to work at Komarch, the largest organically grown IT company in Poland, and I also co-founded, and I was the first CEO of Interia PL, the portal. So before starting Selvita, I was responsible for about $400 million in shareholder value creation directly in my divisions. But when I approached people who have invested in Komarch or in Interia and made their money on the on the investments, they told me, Paweł, we would love to invest in your new thing as long it's in software development or in the internet sector, because we understand it, that's something that we are comfortable investing in. But biotech companies are, well, it's magic, we don't understand it. Poland is not science-based, etc. So before we started generating profits, actually, no institutional investors would touch Selvita on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. So we are in a kind of strange situation where we are developing a risky, innovative pipeline with capital from private sources, with government grants, and with the money from retail investors. Now, after we did some partnering deals, after we created more shareholder value, there are institutional investors that are willing to invest in biotech. And we just raised $40 million in February from the institutional investors in Poland. But whether they will be willing to finance all the way through to an approval with hundreds of millions of dollars of potential R&D expenditure before seeing the first revenues, it's a very interesting question right now.
All right, we've talked what reclassification means. We've talked about raising funds. We've talked about financing. I just want to ask you, do a very quick straw poll among you, essentially, and ask you about the main challenge that you see either for your company, for your industry, and also for corporate Poland. A very brief answer. I'm not asking for a long answer this time around. We can sort of delve deeper into it in a moment. But Martin, let me start with you. What do you classify as your main challenge?
For 11-bit studios, raising capital isn't an issue, a problem, be it equity financing or debt financing. We want to make sure that we work to deliver a good product, something that we're happy with, and we know that gamers are happy with, and then we've worked it and reworked it and reworked it to then be able to launch it. So that's the key issue for the video gaming sector, to have something that can sell on a worldwide market, because from 11-bit studios' point of view, our market isn't Poland, isn't Central Eastern Europe. It's a global market. It's a global industry that was worth $138 billion in 2018. We want to focus on our products.
Mm-hmm.
For us, it's the lack of reputation of Polish science. So basically, we have to explain to U.S. investors, U.S. clients that, for example, the most prescribed drug in the history of the pharmaceutical industry was invented by a graduate of Jagiellonian University from Krakow. Or, for example, that the core RNA stabilization technology behind BioNTech German vaccine company Deals was invented by a Polish professor. So we need more success stories like this in order to, for example, be able to say that if Selvita believes in inflammasome in 2012, 4 years before large pharma companies started believing it in 2016, that we are not stupid but forward-looking. So, we need more credibility on the international markets, people believing that real innovation can come from Poland.
Maciej?
I agree. I see two things. First is we could see on the previous presentation that unemployment in Poland is above 4%. Actually, it's when you live in Poland, I would say it's zero. So you cannot see unemployed people, especially you want to hire somebody. It's almost impossible. Maybe not that impossible like in London, but still. So what we have to do as an economy and the companies, we have to change our model that was based actually for the cheap labor or low-cost labor.
It's about moving up the value chain.
Yeah, value, exactly. And still finds open to immigrants, actually, because this simple work has to be done somehow. So this is one of the challenge, mind shift, because for many, many years we have been using advantage of just being cheaper than in Europe. It is now changing, actually. It is changing, especially with huge immigration to UK from Poland. Many people left, educated people. So this is one thing, and the other is having now access to big capital. Are we will be able to build international brands? Because we don't have many examples, actually. One good example that we managed, actually, in Poland to find against international brand was Polish eBay. Actually, we don't have eBay in Poland, and I think this is very unique in the world. We were able to really, and eBay tried 2 or 3 times to conquer the Polish market. They failed because we had a local Allegro, actually, that is was already on the market, and we have it. But still, they stayed on the Polish market. They were not able to compete with eBay on the global level. So this is the challenge, something that we have to learn somehow, how to manage international brands. And because of our history, we don't have a good international worldwide history with challenging different countries. So this is the challenge for us.
Anna, what's the challenge for you?
We have very similar challenges, and I think very similar to the other healthcare companies around the world, because healthcare today is facing, first of all, this is the demographics, so aging populations, and with such low unemployment rate in Poland, so we have really issue with staff, especially medical staff. So we are thinking now how we can really find a healthcare model in Poland and in general around the world. So this is the big issue for all healthcare companies, because the lack of medical professionals there is everywhere, especially in Poland. It's very painful because it's really very difficult to find people today to work, and it's not easy for us, especially from healthcare, to encourage people from Ukraine and other countries, medical staff, because of a lot of requirements according to the European Union. So they have to spend a lot of time to really make the notification of the diploma. So it takes really time. So this is a big challenge, how to really change the business model and define new professions, change a little bit how we will deliver medical care to people, mostly using a lot of telemedicine, not only the typical consultation patients and doctor, but use other scope of different channels to really treat people, especially focus on preventive medicine, occupational medicine, to keep people healthy because it has direct impact on productivity. This is the one challenge, but in general, this is not only Poland. I think this is around the world. But the second maybe is much more focused on Poland. We are at the time that we really have to really think how we can shape the market in terms of the healthcare market in Poland. So what is the role of the private sector and what is the role of the public sector? How we can complete each other, cooperate each other, especially to create some space for investors to develop, for example, PMI, private medical insurance, and enhance investor for R&D and really invest in new technology and really define. I think it's amazing time now to really define what is the role of the private sector in Poland, how private sector can really help to develop and keep Poles in better health and invest in the healthcare market. So I think that we started the discussion in Poland now, and it's really amazing time to really find some good solutions for us.
I want to pick up on the first bit of your answer, Anna. You were talking about the need to attract people. I mean, there's a big expat community of Polish workers in Western Europe and elsewhere. What's your suggestion of bringing them back, pulling them back to Poland? How do you attract people from heading back?
No, of course, I think that Poland is really a very nice country to come back. However, we have to prepare all what is possible that the people won't come back here. So for sure, we are still cheaper, and the remuneration is still cheaper than in other Western European countries. So I think this is the challenge. The remuneration is growing, and I think is getting better and better. But with especially the issue which I have with doctors, so it's very difficult that doctors will come back when he start the work outside outside Poland in other European countries, because each country really encourage doctors, especially from
Everybody
Poland.
Wants a
so it's not so. So it's still. I think we need really time to develop this profession in Poland. But for Poland, it's very important how we can ensure that the youngest people really stay in Poland and will develop for our country. So now we have to really work on the remuneration, other systems to keep people in Poland.
Martin, I mean, once again, you're a video games company. How do you attract people to Poland?
Exactly, Markus. Quite simply, for higher salaries and benefits. We've seen salary costs, salaries have been increasing within 11-bit studios over the last year because we want to retain talent and we want to find new talent. And we have a very ambitious recruitment program that's currently going on within the company. And we know it's not always to find the right people that we need for programmers, graphic artists. You know, these are young people, they're very mobile people in their 20s and 30s. Now we're finding that people are joining us from the Ukraine, from Georgia, from Turkey, and we welcome them with open arms.
But how do you lure back people from Germany, the UK, Sweden?
You know, we think if we can attract them through, first of all, working within the specific environment that is 11-bit studios, we think that's sort of very important, the whole culture of the workplace. But higher salaries, benefits packages, we have in place a motivational program that's also linked to the share price, the shares on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. That's important, just to encourage within the company a wider share ownership. We have to offer all these things to attract good people.
Pawel?
For us, attracting international talent and, of course, returnees has always been a must because, you know, there was little innovative drug discovery industry in our country, so we have to import some best practices and talent from abroad. So currently at Selvita, out of 510 people, we have 35 people that don't have a Polish citizenship. The largest group are Ukrainians, I think, but we also have attracted quite a few, I think like 7 Italians, 5 Spanish people, some people from the UK. Historically, some of them came because they had a Polish wife or a husband, but now, you know, we have a third wave of recruitment, people that don't have any connections to Poland. They are just attracted by the challenger mentality and the strategy of the company, a good salary, and you know, affordable living in Poland. So they have basically the net disposable income of senior scientists at Selvita is exactly the same as of a senior scientist somewhere in Cambridge or in Oxford, given the cost of properties, taxes, and everything. So simply, Poland in the biotech industry has become kind of transparent part of the international drug discovery services market.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left, but I also want to ask you about reforms and the macro climate. Maciej, if I can ask you, is there anything in particular that you would like to see from the Polish government side, something that authorities, we were hearing from the Prime Minister earlier, and he was brandishing all of the accomplishments of Poland in the past 30 years or so. But what do you still need to see?
Well, of course, there is plenty of things, but one of the things I would like government to understand and to communicate, actually, to see companies, entrepreneurs as, base of the fundamentals of the economy. And I cannot feel it in Poland. Very often I can see that, well, the country, the government is not helping us entrepreneurs in building the business. For example, small example, recently, because I talked to these guys of Polish eBay, how is it possible that AliExpress is sending packages from China for free, and in Poland we have to pay, like £1 for the package? And the answer was simple, and because it is Chinese government that is paying for all the shipments outside from China. Something that was shocking to me, because I have never seen such a support in Poland from Polish government. So many companies in Poland, successful small and medium-sized companies, were able to build, to grow without actually support from any support from the government. So this is something that I will look into, and of course the other is something that recently is very painful. This is changing in law and tax regulations. It's happening, every week, actually, something is changing, and it's very difficult to follow up. So I spent a lot of time recently just to follow up what's going on with the regulations, to keep up with it, instead of focusing on building business. And this is something I know many companies struggle, small and medium-sized companies struggle. So my expenses to lawyers and tax advisors, like tripled in the last 2 years.
Both of you, Pawel and Martin, you're nodding your heads. So are you seeing the same needs then, Martin?
Yes, we're certainly seeing the same needs. Certainly on the tax situation, things do change in Poland. They change very quickly, and we would certainly want to see a more stable tax regime. However, having said that, the Polish government is supporting the video gaming industry in Poland through a combination of direct grants and tax incentives. So that's actually being very helpful for our industry, and we've seen that in the number of new startups that have appeared in Poland over the last 2 years. And about over 20 companies are now listed on the alternative markets, the New Connect market in Warsaw, as well as the main market. So that's good for the industry, but a stable tax environment.
So for us, I think that the major obstacle is lack of proper infrastructure. So basically, if we were in Boston or San Francisco or in Munich, we would have ready lab infrastructure to move into, and we would just kind of manage our business, developing drugs. In Poland, there is scarcity of lab space, so if you need to expand your labs, basically you have to build your own building. So I'd rather much, not get a grant from the government to build a laboratory building, but for the government or local governments, or have some kind of public-private partnerships to build infrastructure, so that we can focus on our business rather than focusing on building a road to our building, for example. So that's something that I think we should work on.
Anna?
No, very similar, of course, partnership, public-private partnership and long-term perspective for the common cooperation is very important to fulfill the public needs. So we are in my view, amazing partner to really help government to meet the all expectation in terms of the healthcare. And another things I mentioned before, this is to build space for another financing. So this is the incentives, tax incentives, and really grow PMI and private healthcare insurance in Poland. So which I think will be very good to really expand the financing for healthcare.
All right. On that, I think we're going to wrap up this session. I want to thank all of you, Anna, Maciej, Pawel, and Martin, for being here today.